I planned every single detail for our 5th anniversary trip to Paris. First-class flights, luxury suites, the works. 2 weeks before departure, my husband looked me in the eye and announced he was going on a 2-week cruise with his teenage daughter and his ex-wife on those exact dates. No explanation, no apology. Later, he texted me from the VIP lounge saying his daughter needs both her parents there. I simply smiled and replied with a single message. The moment he read it, his face went pale, and he texted back, "Wait, what? If you have ever had your hard-earned empire drained to fund a mediocre man's ego and his ex-wife's delusions, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe. You will definitely want to hear exactly how I sank their luxury ship." My name is Chloe. I am 34 years old, and I built my life from the ground up. Living in Atlanta, I run a highly successful luxury travel and wealth management firm. I am the breadwinner, the planner, and the one who makes things happen. My husband Marcus is 38. He works as a middle manager at a logistics company. When we met, I fell for his charm and his dedication to being a good father to his daughter Lily, who is now 15. But over our 5 years of marriage, I noticed a frustrating pattern. Marcus carried a massive amount of broken home guilt. He constantly overcompensated, trying to prove he was still the perfect dad. The problem was that his guilt became a blank check for his ex-wife Vanessa to exploit. Vanessa loved playing the independent boss mom on social media, but behind closed doors, she used Lily as a pawn to manipulate Marcus into funding her lifestyle. I usually stayed out of it, keeping the peace because I loved him. I paid the mortgage, I covered the bills, and I let him use his income to play superhero for his first family. But our 5th anniversary was supposed to be about us. I had worked 80-hour weeks to clear my schedule. I was standing in our master bedroom, carefully packing my Louis Vuitton luggage, picturing the romantic dinners in Paris. 2 first-class tickets sat on the nightstand, representing a milestone I thought we were both excited to celebrate. My firm specializes in curating exclusive experiences for high-net-worth clients, so orchestrating our own getaway was my way of showing Marcus my devotion. I wanted to pull him away from the endless demands of his ex-wife, from the constant text messages about Lily needing new cheerleading gear or Vanessa needing help with her car. For 14 days, it was just going to be Marcus and me walking along the Seine and remembering who we were before the heavy reality of our blended family took over. I smoothed out a silk dress and glanced at the tickets, feeling a surge of genuine joy. I was so blinded by my own excitement that I completely missed the cold reality walking through my bedroom door. Marcus walked into the bedroom looking completely indifferent to the luggage spread across the bed and the glossy tickets resting on the nightstand. He did not smile. He did not wrap his arms around me. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets. "I have bad news, Chloe," he said, his voice flat and practiced. "My company just dropped a critical sudden project rollout. It is an all-hands-on-deck situation. I cannot take the time off for Paris. We have to cancel." I stood there holding the pair of shoes, feeling the air leave the room. Cancel Paris. The trip I had been planning for 8 months. I tried to find a trace of genuine regret in his eyes, but there was none. He looked almost impatient, like he wanted to get this conversation over with as quickly as possible. I swallowed the hard lump of disappointment in my throat. I told myself to be the supportive wife. I told myself that his career was important and that corporate emergencies happen. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We can reschedule. Work comes first." He gave me a quick, tight nod, turned around, and walked back downstairs without another word. No apology for the thousands of dollars I had already spent. No promise to make it up to me. Just a cold dismissal. I spent the next 3 days burying myself in my own work, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the truth has a funny way of revealing itself when you least expect it. It was a Tuesday evening. Marcus was in the shower, and I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of wine. His iPad was resting on the kitchen island, completely unlocked. I am not the type of woman to snoop through a man's devices. I never needed to. But the screen lit up brightly, catching my attention. It was an incoming text message notification from Vanessa. I glanced down, expecting it to be another demand for child support or a complaint about Lily's grades. Instead, the words on the screen made my blood run absolutely cold. Do not forget the SPF 50 for the Bahamas, Marcus Vanessa wrote. 14 days of VIP sun. Lily is so excited. I stood frozen, staring at the glowing screen. 14 days. The Bahamas. I quickly did the math in my head. The dates Vanessa was talking about overlapped perfectly with the exact 2 weeks we were supposed to be in Paris. The critical sudden project rollout was a complete lie. My husband was not staying behind to work. He had canceled our 5-year anniversary trip to Paris so he could take his ex-wife and his teenage daughter on a luxury tropical cruise. He looked me right in my face, watched me pack my bags, and lied without a single ounce of hesitation. I did not scream. I did not throw my wineglass against the wall. A terrifying, icy calm washed over my entire body. I carefully locked the iPad exactly as he left it and walked out of the kitchen. Marcus thought he could play me for a fool. He thought because I had always been the understanding, accommodating wife that I would just quietly accept whatever scraps of his time he threw my way. He had absolutely no idea that I managed millions of dollars for a living and that tracking deceitful men was practically my specialty. I waited, letting silence build. 15 minutes later, Marcus walked in, rubbing his hair dry. He stopped seeing me. I had not packed the Paris tickets. I stared at him, piercing through his calm facade, watching him carefully, to see if he would show even a sliver of genuine remorse for what he was doing to our marriage. He let out a loud, heavy sigh, acting incredibly annoyed that I was still in the room instead of waiting for him downstairs to serve him. I asked how the supposedly critical project rollout was going today, knowing full well the answer. He muttered it was stressful. I asked if the rollout required SPF 50. He froze. His exhaustion morphed into unmistakable panic. I told him Vanessa left a notification on his iPad about a 14-day VIP cruise to the Bahamas. I asked why he was taking his ex-wife on a tropical vacation during our 5th anniversary. He stammered, saying I was reading things out of context. I stepped closer, keeping my voice level. I told him there was no context where a sun vacation with his ex-wife equaled a logistics emergency. He realized lying was useless. He threw on sweatpants, pacing the floor. I demanded a thorough explanation right then and there. I wanted him to justify canceling our trip to parade around the Caribbean with the woman who disrespected our marriage. He had the audacity to tell me to lower my voice in my own home. I told him I would not lower my standards. I asked if he thought I was stupid enough to believe he booked a family vacation over our exact Paris dates. He crossed his arms, glaring. His guilt vanished, replaced by arrogance. He claimed it was a coincidence and the cruise line only had those dates. I asked if he paid for a romantic suite for himself and his ex-wife. He scoffed, saying it was a family suite and I was overreacting. I told him he was out of his mind if he expected me to stay married to a man prioritizing another woman's vacation over our anniversary. He did not offer a single apology for lying. Instead, he flipped the script. Marcus went straight on the offensive, weaponizing his teenage daughter against me. Lily is going through a tough phase, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. She needs a family healing trip. She needs both her parents under one roof supporting her. You are an adult, Chloe. You should understand co-parenting and put your feelings aside. I laughed, a bitter sound echoing in the room. Co-parenting, I asked him, taking a step forward. Co-parenting is showing up for parent-teacher conferences or splitting the cost of braces. Co-parenting is not a 2-week luxury cruise where you play happy family with the woman you divorced. I quickly pointed out the utter absurdity of Vanessa proudly tagging along for an expensive premium romantic cruise package meant exclusively for married couples. I firmly told him, teenagers do not need their divorced parents sipping strong margaritas on a luxury sun deck to heal from their past trauma. They need firm boundaries and stability. I reminded him that I had provided that financial and emotional stability for years, without complaining even once. I paid for Lily's private tutoring when she failed math. I funded her cheerleading camps. I gave her a safe home to visit every weekend, while Vanessa spent child support on designer bags and extravagant brunch dates. Marcus stepped into my personal space, his eyes flashing with anger. "You are just deeply insecure and jealous of a 15-year-old girl." He sneered, trying to break me down. "You cannot handle the fact that my daughter needs me more than she needs you. You cannot stand that Vanessa and I actually have an unbreakable bond because we share a child." He told me I was being completely unreasonable and that he was entirely exhausted from constantly trying to appease my fragile ego day after day. He walked to the walk-in closet and pulled down a duffel bag. He aggressively shoved shirts and pants into it. I asked where he was going tonight. He said he needed space from my toxic energy. He claimed he could not be around a woman who would selfishly ruin a healing trip for a struggling teenager. He zipped the heavy bag shut, slung it over his broad shoulder, and walked briskly toward the bedroom door without looking back. He paused, looking back one last time, telling me I needed to grow up and accept that his first family would always be his main priority, no matter what. Then, he turned and walked down the stairs. I heard the front door slam shut, followed by the heavy thud of his car doors. The engine roared to life and he drove away, leaving me completely alone in our decorated bedroom with 2 useless tickets to Paris. I stood absolutely still, listening to the fading sound of his tires squealing on the wet pavement outside. I did not shed a single tear. Crying was for weak women who did not know their own true power. Crying was for women who waited around for a mediocre man to choose them. I was certainly not that kind of woman, and I refused to ever be. I walked over to my modern desk, sat down in my leather ergonomic chair, took a deep breath to steady my heart, and flipped open my sleek silver laptop. The glowing screen illuminated the otherwise dark room, with a bright, sterile light casting long shadows against walls. If Marcus wanted to play games with our family finances, he was about to learn the hard way that I owned the entire casino and controlled every bet. He was about to find out what happens when you underestimate a woman who builds empires while you build lies. I opened my secure browser and navigated straight to my banking portals. As a wealth manager, I do not throw plates against walls or scream into pillows when I am betrayed. I follow the money. Money always tells the absolute truth. I started with our joint accounts. The balances were perfectly intact, untouched since my last review. Next, I pulled up Marcus' personal checking and savings accounts. I managed all our household finances, so accessing his data took mere seconds. I scanned his direct deposits from his logistics company. His salary was exactly what it had always been, firmly mediocre. He barely had $5,000 in disposable cash to his name. A 14-day VIP suite on a premium cruise line for 3 people during peak season would easily cost tens of thousands of dollars. Where did he get the funds to finance Vanessa's tropical delusions? I ran a soft credit check on his social security number, expecting to see a newly opened high-yield credit card or a massive personal loan. The report came back completely clean. His existing credit cards were nearly maxed out from his usual spending habits, buying expensive sneakers and covering Vanessa's spontaneous shopping trips, but there was absolutely no sign of a massive vacation purchase. The math was not adding up, and in my world, bad math is a blaring siren. If Marcus did not drain his personal accounts and he did not touch our joint savings, how on earth did he secure a luxury booking? He certainly did not win the lottery. I leaned closer to the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes as my fingers flew across the keyboard. I decided to cast a wider net, running an aggregate search across every single financial institution linked to our home address. I sifted through rows and rows of digital ledgers, transaction histories, and routing numbers. I was hunting for a ghost transaction. An hour passed in absolute silence, broken only by the rhythmic clicking of my keys. Then I finally found it. A massive red flag glaring at me from the screen. A cleared payment authorized exactly 12 days ago directly to Royal Caribbean International. My breath caught in my throat as my eyes traced the digital receipt. The total amount was a staggering $45,000. I stared at that terrifying number, letting the sheer magnitude of his betrayal wash over me. $45,000 was not just a vacation. It was a statement. It was a deliberate, calculated choice to lavish his ex-wife and daughter with absolute luxury. I pulled up the itemized invoice attached to the routing number. Marcus had spared no expense. He booked the Grand Loft suite featuring private balconies, personal butler service, and premium dining packages. He even added spa treatments specifically registered under Vanessa's name. He was treating the woman who constantly disrespected me to a five-star experience while simultaneously convincing me he was drowning in corporate deadlines. The sheer audacity of his deception was breathtaking. But the burning question still remained: which account authorized this massive payment? I traced the routing number backward, moving through the digital gateway to find the source of the funds. The origin account was not a personal checking account or a hidden offshore fund. The routing sequence looked incredibly familiar, too familiar. The realization hit me with the force of a freight train. The $45,000 charge was billed directly to my firm's primary corporate expense account. He had used my exclusive business American Express Black Card. I clicked into the transaction details, my heart pounding against my ribs as I read the internal accounting note. The massive cruise payment had been manually categorized under executive retreats and team-building expenses. My hands actually shook as I hovered my mouse over the screen. This was no longer just a case of a weak husband lying about his whereabouts or committing emotional infidelity. This was a direct financial attack on my business. This was grand larceny. Marcus had committed corporate theft against my company to finance a vacation for his ex-wife. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, forcing my brain to process the gravity of the situation. My firm handles millions of dollars for high-net-worth clients. Because of the extreme sensitivity of our work, my corporate accounts are locked behind military-grade security firewalls. Any transaction over $10,000 requires strict multi-factor authentication. It requires a rotating PIN code from a physical RSA token, an encrypted password, and a secondary administrative approval from the accounting department. Marcus is a man who regularly locks himself out of our home Wi-Fi network. He can barely remember his basic email passwords without calling tech support. He absolutely does not possess the technical skills or the financial authorization to bypass my firm's multi-factor authentication protocols alone. He could never spoof an IP address, access the heavily guarded corporate portal, and seamlessly categorize a fraudulent $45,000 vacation as an executive business expense in my proprietary accounting software. The digital footprints were too clean. The categorization was too perfect. The approval bypassed my personal alerts entirely, which meant whoever authorized it had top-tier administrative privileges. Marcus was nothing more than a useful idiot holding a stolen credit card. He definitely had an accomplice, someone operating inside my secure network, someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the ledgers without triggering the automated fraud alarms, someone I trusted implicitly with the keys to my kingdom. My mind raced through the very short list of individuals who possessed that level of clearance. The betrayal was deepening by the second. I sat back in my chair, the silence of the empty house deafening as the pieces of the puzzle violently snapped into place. I opened the security protocol dashboard and pulled the raw audit logs for the $45,000 transaction. Every single action taken within my corporate portal requires a digital signature attached to an IP address and a unique employee identifier. I bypassed the standard user interface and dove straight into the backend code, parsing through the alphanumeric strings. My eyes locked onto the final approval credential. User ID 742. I did not even need to look up the directory to know exactly who that ID belonged to. It belonged to Kyle. Kyle is 40 years old, a certified public accountant, and my brother-in-law. He is a white man married to Marcus' older sister, Keisha. For the past 3 years, he has operated as the primary external accountant for my luxury travel and wealth management firm. I brought him on board shortly after my business exploded in growth, mostly as a favor to Keisha, who constantly complained that Kyle's mid-level firm was intentionally overlooking him for senior promotions. I gave him a lucrative retainer, a prestigious title, and full access to the inner workings of my financial empire. In return, He gave me relentless condescension. Kyle always loved playing the role of the great financial savior at our Sunday family cookouts. He would stand by the patio grill sipping a craft beer and loudly offer unsolicited advice on our investment portfolios. He carried this incredibly arrogant savior complex, acting as if he was doing our successful Black family a massive favor by watching our money for us. He loved dropping complicated financial buzzwords around Marcus, making my husband feel intellectually small, while simultaneously positioning himself as the indispensable genius holding my corporate structure together. Whenever I spoke about scaling my operations, Kyle would offer a patronizing smile and remind me to be careful with rapid expansion. He honestly believed my success was a lucky fluke that required his steady, experienced hand to maintain. I tolerated his daily microaggressions, his mansplaining, and his arrogant smirks, because Keisha loved him deeply, and I valued family harmony above all else. I trusted his professional credentials and truly believed he respected the strict boundaries of our business contract. I was dangerously wrong. The digital signature glowing brightly on my screen proved that the arrogant accountant sipping beer at my dining table was nothing more than a common thief. Finding his exact signature on the premium cruise payment was just the tip of the iceberg. I needed to see exactly how deep this rotting infection went. I initiated a full-scale forensic audit on every single ledger Kyle had ever touched since the day I signed his vendor contract. I restricted his access remotely, putting his administrative profile into a shadow mode where he could not see my active investigation, but was entirely locked out of making any new changes or deleting past records. I opened his quarterly reconciliation reports, matching them line by line against the raw banking data. Kyle had weaponized his administrative access with terrifying precision. He knew exactly how my automated fraud detection software operated, so he manipulated the algorithm parameters to completely ignore specific vendor categories. He approved Marcus' fraudulent expenses by burying them deep within our massive quarterly tax write-offs. He intentionally mislabeled the Royal Caribbean charge as a corporate venue deposit for our upcoming International Wealth Summit. He even fabricated fake invoices matching the exact dollar amounts, attaching them to the digital ledger to create a flawless paper trail. Anyone doing a standard quarterly review would simply scroll right past it without batting an eye. But I do not do standard reviews when my survival instincts are triggered. I dug deeper, pulling the unedited archives from the past 24 months. The betrayal unfolding before my eyes was multi-layered, calculated, and absolutely sickening. My husband and my brother-in-law had actively conspired to rob me blind. Marcus was the greedy beneficiary demanding untraceable cash to fund his desperate attempts to impress his ex-wife, while Kyle was the calculated architect building the secret digital tunnels to sneak the money out unnoticed. They operated a perfect unholy alliance right under my nose. Marcus provided the emotional excuses and the marital distractions at home, while Kyle manipulated the spreadsheets and cleared the security alarms at the office. They probably laughed about it behind my back. I could vividly picture them sitting on my custom leather sofas drinking my expensive bourbon, quietly mocking the woman funding their entire existence. Marcus resented my financial power because it emasculated him, and Kyle resented my success because it challenged his inherent sense of superiority. Together, they found the perfect way to cut me down. They thought I was just a busy, distracted founder who blindly trusted her husband and her accountant. They completely underestimated my meticulous nature and my absolute ruthlessness. They forgot that I built this company from absolute scratch, fighting tooth and nail against a corporate industry designed to keep women exactly like me locked out. I understand every single line of code, every complex tax loophole, and every strict banking regulation because I had to learn them to survive and thrive. Kyle assumed his accounting degree made him the smartest person in the room. He assumed I would never check the raw data files or question his perfectly formatted PDF reports. He used his privilege and his trusted position to facilitate a massive corporate embezzlement scheme simply to help Marcus play sugar daddy to Vanessa. The sheer audacity of their conspiracy fueled a cold, dark fire inside my chest. They had intentionally violated my marriage, my business, and my family trust in one sweeping blow. I sat in the blue glow of the monitor, taking high-resolution screenshots and downloading every altered ledger onto an encrypted external hard drive. I compiled a massive mountain of irrefutable digital evidence, meticulously documenting every false entry and unauthorized approval. I was not just gathering proof of a cheating husband. I was assembling an airtight federal indictment. I locked the heavy oak door to my home office and pulled the blinds shut, blocking out the morning sun. For the next 48 hours, that room became my absolute war bunker. I ignored the buzzing of my personal phone as Marcus tried to call me with his pathetic excuses. I ignored the persistent knocking from my housekeeper telling her through the door that I was on an international conference call. I survived solely on black coffee and sheer unfiltered adrenaline. I needed to see the entire blast radius of this betrayal before I made my next move. I booted up my encrypted workstation and initiated a deep forensic trace on every single ledger Kyle had ever authorized since the exact date I hired his firm. My eyes burned as I scrolled through thousands of transaction codes, matching purchase orders against cleared bank wires and internal accounting logs. I built a massive digital flowchart on my secondary monitor, mapping out exactly how Kyle moved my money through the system. He was smart enough to avoid large lump sum transfers, which would instantly trigger our banking compliance flags. Instead, he utilized a sophisticated financial technique called smurfing. He broke down the stolen funds into dozens of smaller, innocuous payments, bleeding my company dry through 1,000 tiny, unnoticed cuts over a long period. I tracked a distinct pattern of recurring monthly charges categorized under external marketing consultation and client acquisition services. My firm relies heavily on independent contractors to secure high net worth leads, so seeing consulting fees on the balance sheet was completely normal business practice. But these specific invoices lacked the detailed performance metrics and conversion data I usually demanded from my vendors. They were perfectly formatted PDF documents boasting professional letterheads, but the actual itemized services were suspiciously vague. Strategic outreach implementation, brand alignment coordination, synergy development. These were empty corporate buzzwords designed to look legitimate to a casual observer or a lazy auditor. I isolated the payment routing numbers linked to these specific fraudulent invoices. Every single one of these phantom payments fed directly into a singular corporate banking account, routing through a regional credit union. I highlighted the payee name on the master spreadsheet and stared at it. V-Lux Consulting. The name sounded like a cheap knockoff of a legitimate luxury brand, something an amateur influencer would invent. I immediately cross-referenced my active vendor database and my legal archives. My company had absolutely no signed contracts, no non-disclosure agreements, and no email correspondence with any entity operating under the name V-Lux Consulting. We had never done business with them. Yet my corporate accounts were steadily feeding this phantom agency on a precise bi-weekly schedule perfectly aligned with our standard contractor payout dates. Kyle had meticulously integrated this fake vendor into our payroll system, masking the outbound wires within the massive batches of legitimate contractor payments. The sheer volume of the transactions over time was staggering. I ran a sum function on the isolated spreadsheet, watching the numbers tally up column by column. The final digit that populated at the bottom of the screen made my blood run icy cold. The $45,000 luxury cruise was absolutely not an isolated incident. It was simply their most brazen and greedy maneuver, yet the moment they got too comfortable and sloppy. Over the past 24 months, Kyle and Marcus had systematically siphoned over $150,000 from my business accounts into V-Lux Consulting. $150,000 of my hard-earned profit stolen right under my nose. I had worked through weekends, missed family holidays, and sacrificed my own health to build this company into an industry leader. Meanwhile, my husband and my brother-in-law were treating my corporate accounts like their own personal piggy bank to fund a shadow life. They had stolen enough money to buy a house in cash or fully fund a college education. I needed to know exactly who was sitting at the end of this dirty money pipeline reaping the benefits of my labor. I opened a secure browser window navigating directly to the Georgia Secretary of State Business Registry database. I typed VLux Consulting into the active corporate entity search bar and hit enter. The system loaded the official articles of organization and the annual registration filings. I downloaded the original incorporation documents and zoomed in on the registered agent and sole proprietor section. The name printed in stark black ink felt like a physical blow to my chest. Vanessa. Vanessa was the sole managing member and registered agent of VLux Consulting. The business address listed on the official state filing was a luxury high-rise condominium located in the most expensive district of Buckhead, Atlanta. The puzzle was finally complete, and the picture it painted was absolutely sickening. Marcus was not just a cheating husband trying to impress his ex-wife with a random luxury vacation to the Bahamas. He was actively financing Vanessa's entire lavish lifestyle using my money. He and Kyle had engineered a massive corporate embezzlement ring simply to maintain Vanessa's delusions of grandeur. While she was busy bragging on social media about being a self-made independent boss mom, my sweat and tears were secretly paying her rent, buying her designer clothes, and funding her 15-year-old daughter's cheerleading camps. Marcus was playing the ultimate provider for his first family, completely subsidizing their existence with stolen funds. The rage that ignited inside me was no longer a frantic emotional fire. It was a cold, calculated weapon ready to be deployed. I downloaded the state registry documents and added them to my encrypted hard drive. The evidence was irrefutable. I had the routing numbers, the fake invoices, the IP addresses, and the state business filings. They had left a flawless paper trail leading directly to their own destruction. I pulled up the property tax records for the Buckhead address listed under VLux Consulting. It was not just any standard apartment complex. It was the Sovereign, a premier ultra-luxury high-rise in the heart of Atlanta. The monthly lease for a 3-bedroom unit there easily ran north of $6,000. Add in the homeowners association fees, the premium parking, and the concierge services, and the annual carrying cost was astronomical. I opened a burner social media account I kept for vetting potential corporate hires and navigated straight to Vanessa's public Instagram page. Her entire grid was a meticulously curated shrine to her fabricated success. There she was, posing on a sweeping glass balcony, with the Atlanta skyline glittering behind her, holding a crystal glass of champagne. The caption read, "Another blessed day in my dream home. Real estate goals achieved by a self-made independent boss mom. Hustle and grind, ladies." I scrolled further down the feed, my jaw clenching tighter with every single post I read. I saw photos of Vanessa carrying a brand new Chanel tote bag, stepping out of a late-model Range Rover. I saw professionally edited videos of her hosting lavish catered brunches for her church friends in her expansive marble kitchen, claiming her independent consulting business was absolutely booming. She constantly posted lengthy motivational quotes about female empowerment, financial independence, and building generational wealth for her daughter. The sheer hypocrisy of her digital footprint made my stomach turn. Her entire lavish aesthetic was completely bankrolled by my bleeding company. Every single brick of her luxury high-rise, every drop of her expensive champagne, and every designer label draped across her shoulders was paid for by the sleepless nights I spent negotiating international travel contracts. I was the invisible, silent engine powering her flashy boss babe facade. Marcus was playing the ultimate high-roller provider, masking his severe financial insecurity by handing his ex-wife a stolen blank check with my name printed right on it. He got to feel like a powerful magnate, keeping his first family draped in absolute luxury, while I foolishly praised him for being such a responsible, dedicated co-parent. The realization that I had funded my own disrespect for 2 entire years was a bitter pill to swallow, but it completely eradicated any lingering affection I had left for my lying husband. The sheer unadulterated audacity of Marcus maintaining his ex-wife in a penthouse suite, using my corporate sweat equity, hit a critical mass inside my brain. A simple, clean divorce was no longer on the table. A standard divorce meant polite mediation. A divorce meant splitting assets and listening to smug lawyers argue over who gets to keep the house. A standard divorce would allow Marcus to walk away with a minor slap on the wrist, while Vanessa continued to play the innocent victim online. I did not want to just leave him. I wanted absolute scorched earth justice. I wanted to systematically dismantle the fake kingdom they built with my stolen bricks, and I wanted to ensure they felt the crushing weight of the real world collapsing directly on their heads. They committed a massive federal crime to fund their fake lifestyle, and I was going to hand them over to the federal government on a silver platter. I picked up my personal cell phone and dialed my private attorney, a ruthless corporate litigator named Samantha, who specialized in high-stakes asset recovery. She answered on the second ring. I told her I was emailing an encrypted zip file containing irrefutable proof of a six-figure embezzlement scheme orchestrated by my husband and my contracted accounting firm. I told her I needed divorce papers drafted immediately, but they were to remain sealed until I gave the explicit order to strike. Samantha reviewed the initial summary while we were on the line and let out a low whistle, confirming that Kyle had committed massive professional malpractice that would permanently end his entire career. She assured me she would start preparing the civil asset forfeiture documents to reclaim my stolen funds from Vanessa's accounts. But Samantha was just the very first step. I needed much heavier artillery to handle the criminal aspect of the theft. I scrolled through my contact list until I found the number for Special Agent Davis. I had met him a year ago during a cybersecurity seminar where my firm consulted on protecting high-net-worth travel assets from wire fraud. We had kept in touch professionally. I tapped the call button and waited for him to answer. When he picked up, I skipped the pleasantries. I told him I had a fully documented case of wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and tax evasion crossing state and federal lines, involving a licensed certified public accountant manipulating corporate ledgers. I explained the exact timeline the smurfing technique Kyle used to evade banking triggers, and the fake limited liability company receiving the stolen funds. Agent Davis immediately understood the severe gravity of the situation. He told me that manipulating corporate tax filings to hide stolen money elevated this from a messy domestic dispute to a highly serious federal investigation. He asked if I had preserved the original digital audit logs before locking the suspects out of the network. I assured him the digital evidence was perfectly isolated, encrypted, and ready for a thorough federal review. We scheduled a highly confidential meeting at his field office for the very next morning. I hung up the phone and looked around my dark war room. The trap was officially set. My husband and his accomplices thought they were untouchable, heading off to a luxury tropical vacation on my dime. They were completely unaware that the federal government was about to become their newest travel companion. I arrived at the FBI field office at precisely 8 o'clock the next morning. The sterile, heavily secured building stood in stark contrast to the luxurious facade my husband and his accomplices were currently enjoying. I was escorted into a windowless conference room where Special Agent Davis was waiting alongside a federal forensic accountant and my personal attorney, Samantha. I placed the encrypted external hard drive squarely in the center of the metal table. That tiny silver rectangle held the entire blueprint of their destruction. Agent Davis plugged the drive into a secure terminal, and the forensic accountant immediately began running verification protocols on the raw data I had extracted. The room fell silent except for the clicking of a mouse and the low hum of the ventilation system. It took them less than 20 minutes to verify the gravity of the situation. Because Kyle had manipulated corporate tax filings to hide the stolen money, and because the funds were being wired across state lines to pay for a cruise embarking from Florida, the embezzlement instantly escalated into a major federal offense. We were no longer dealing with a simple civil dispute over marital assets. We were dealing with wire fraud, tax evasion, and organized corporate theft. Agent Davis leaned back in his chair, his expression deadpan, but his eyes sharp. He explained that federal indictments require meticulous preparation. They needed to secure subpoenas for the regional credit union, intercept the fake invoices from Kyle's accounting firm, and draft federal arrest warrants. The most critical element of their investigation was maintaining absolute secrecy. Agent Davis looked me directly in the eye and delivered a strict directive. I could not confront Marcus. I could not fire Kyle. I could not freeze the stolen funds immediately. If I tipped them off early, Kyle would use his CPA credentials to mass delete the server histories, shred physical documents, and potentially wire the remaining stolen funds into untraceable offshore accounts. I had to let them believe their scheme was completely flawless. I had to smile, swallow my pride, and play the role of the submissive, defeated wife. I had to let them pack their bags and head to Miami, feeling like kings of the world. It was the hardest instruction I have ever received in my entire professional career, but I understood the strategic necessity. To catch a rat, you have to leave the cheese exactly where they expect it to be. Samantha handed me a stack of preliminary divorce and asset forfeiture documents to sign. She assured me that the moment the FBI executed their raid, she would file the civil motions simultaneously, ensuring Vanessa would be locked out of her luxury condo before the news even hit the local papers. We mapped out the exact timeline. The cruise was set to depart in 4 days. The federal agents needed exactly that amount of time to position their field operatives at the port of Miami. I shook hands with the agents leaving the federal building with a burning sense of purpose. I was no longer just a betrayed spouse. I was an active informant in a federal sting operation. I sat in the driver's seat of my car in the federal building parking lot and pulled out my personal cell phone. The screen was littered with missed calls and manipulative text messages from Marcus. He was laying the groundwork for his return, acting as if his dramatic exit the night before was my fault for being unsupportive. He sent a long paragraph about how stressful his life was and how he just needed me to be a team player for once. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes, and channeling every ounce of corporate restraint I possessed. I needed to feed his massive ego exactly what it craved. I needed to give him the illusion of absolute victory. My fingers flew across the keyboard, crafting the perfect submission. I typed that I had spent the night crying and thinking about our argument. I told him I was incredibly hurt by the sudden change of plans, but I realized that I was letting my own selfish disappointment cloud my judgment. I wrote that Lily truly deserved a happy environment, and I wanted her to have a wonderful healing trip with both her biological parents. I ended the message by telling him to have a good trip, and that we would work on our marriage when he returned. I hit send, feeling a wave of disgust wash over me, but I knew the bait was perfectly placed. His response came through less than 3 minutes later. He did not say thank you. He did not acknowledge the pain he had supposedly caused me. He simply replied that he was glad I finally saw reason and told me to transfer an extra $1,000 to his checking account for emergency travel cash. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of his demand fueled me. He honestly believed he had successfully bullied a self-made millionaire into funding his tropical getaway with the woman who constantly disrespected her. I sent the $1,000 without a single argument, noting the transfer in my mental ledger as the absolute final penny he would ever extract from my empire. I drove back to my house and locked myself inside my home office. The FBI told me not to freeze the accounts immediately, but they never said I could not rig the system for a delayed execution. I opened my banking administrator portal and began preparing the digital guillotine. I could not risk manually locking the cards while they were traveling because I wanted the element of surprise to hit them at the exact worst possible moment. Instead, I coded a precise automated script. I set a timed freeze on my business American Express Black Card, Kyle's corporate accounting access tokens, and all of Marcus' joint checking accounts. I programmed the system to execute the total financial lockdown exactly 48 hours before their cruise departure. I meticulously verified the time zones and the banking synchronization protocols. Once the clock struck the designated hour, my security software would automatically revoke every single credential flag, the accounts for severe fraudulent activity, and sever their access to the money pipeline. They would be completely cut off from my wealth without any warning whatsoever. I leaned back in my leather chair, watching the digital countdown clock begin its silent ticking on my secondary monitor. Marcus thought he was the master manipulator pulling the strings of two different women to serve his own selfish desires. He had absolutely no idea he was dancing directly into a federal trap. I poured myself a glass of expensive bourbon and raised it to the empty room. The Trojan horse was officially inside their gates, and they were happily polishing the wood. 4 days before the luxury cruise departure, the group needed a proper send-off shopping spree. I sat in my quiet office monitoring the digital landscape as the notifications began rolling in. Vanessa could never resist broadcasting her supposed wealth, and today was no exception. She went live on Instagram, broadcasting directly from the VIP lounge at Phipps Plaza, Atlanta's most exclusive shopping destination. The camera panned across the plush velvet seating, showing crystal flutes filled with champagne. Marcus sat right beside her, looking incredibly smug, in a tailored linen shirt, holding his glass up for a toast. Lily was busy trying on oversized designer sunglasses, pouting for the camera, and tagging her location to ensure all her high school friends knew exactly how rich her father was. The most infuriating part of the broadcast, however, was the presence of the other two guests. Kyle and my sister-in-law, Keisha, were sitting across from them, laughing loudly and clinking their glasses together. Marcus had apparently decided to reward his white accomplice for his accounting skills by inviting him and Keisha on the getaway as a thank you. Kyle looked directly into Vanessa's camera, shouting that hard work definitely pays off. I watched the video replay, observing the sheer arrogance radiating from every person in that group. They were celebrating a heist. They were drinking champagne and buying resort wear using funds stolen directly from my corporate sweat. Keisha, who had always pretended to be my supportive sister-in-law, was happily enabling my husband's financial infidelity because it earned her a free vacation. Kyle, who sat at my dining table and criticized my business strategies, was now using my money to fund his tropical drinks. Marcus looked like the ultimate provider, the generous patriarch taking care of his entire extended family. He was playing the benevolent king, treating his ex-wife, his daughter, his sister, and his brother-in-law to a lavish shopping spree. The pure, unadulterated entitlement was staggering. I watched Vanessa pan the camera to a stack of luxury shopping bags already piled high at their feet. They were moving from boutique to boutique, swiping the corporate card with absolute reckless abandon. They felt completely invincible. They assumed the money pipeline was flowing freely and smoothly, carefully protected by Kyle's accounting magic. I monitored the pending transaction alerts hitting my secondary secure server. A $500 charge at a high-end swimwear boutique, a $200 charge at an exclusive sunglass retailer, a $1,000 lunch bill at a premium steakhouse. Every single swipe of that card was another nail in their collective coffin. I sat at my desk watching the numbers tick upward on my screen. My automated script was originally designed to lock them out 48 hours before departure, but watching Kyle smile smugly into that camera completely altered my timeline. I decided I did not want to wait another 2 days to pull the rug out from under them. I wanted to see them fall right now in the middle of their victory lap. I opened my master control terminal and deactivated the scheduled timer. I was no longer going to let the automated system handle my execution. I wanted to pull the trigger with my own 2 hands. My fingers moved swiftly across the mechanical keyboard, initiating the absolute financial lockdown. First, I targeted Kyle. I logged into the State Accounting Board portal and flagged his firm for critical administrative review, effectively suspending his professional credentials pending a federal investigation. Then I accessed my internal corporate servers and instantly revoked his security clearance. I wiped his biometric data from the system, deactivated his virtual private network access, and scrambled the multi-factor authentication tokens. If he tried to log in, he would find himself staring at a permanent fatal error screen. Next, I moved to Marcus. I accessed our joint personal accounts and transferred every single legitimate penny of my own income into a private, untouchable offshore holding account, leaving his balance at precisely zero. Finally, I targeted the bleeding corporate expense account. I selected the specific American Express black card Marcus was currently carrying around Phipps Plaza. I clicked the bright red button labeled Report Stolen and permanently froze the entire line of credit. The kill switch was officially engaged. The financial guillotine had dropped, completely severing their pipeline in a matter of seconds. They were now financially paralyzed. I kept my eyes glued to the transaction monitor, waiting for the inevitable impact. According to Vanessa's latest social media update, the group had proudly marched into the Gucci boutique to purchase matching travel accessories. I could visualize the scene perfectly. The pristine marble floors, the attentive sales associates offering them sparkling water, and Marcus standing tall, ready to play the wealthy benefactor. Vanessa had selected a stunning $3,000 designer luggage set, loudly boasting about how perfect it would look on the cruise ship deck. The sales associate carefully boxed the expensive leather items and presented the final staggering bill. Marcus, with a practiced look of casual boredom, confidently reached into his leather wallet and pulled out my heavy metal corporate card. He handed it across the polished glass counter, fully expecting the transaction to clear instantly, just like all the others. The associate slid the card into the premium terminal and waited for the approval code. I watched my screen as the transaction pinged my frozen server. The request for $3,000 hung in the digital void for exactly 2 seconds. Then the system violently rejected it. A massive red alert flashed across my monitor, confirming the denial. The terminal at the Gucci checkout counter beeped loudly, flashing a highly embarrassing message. Transaction declined. Card reported stolen. I leaned back in my chair, picking up my cup of black coffee, and took a slow, satisfying sip. The silent strike was complete. The invincible king of Phipps Plaza was about to experience his very first taste of absolute public humiliation. The sales associate at the Gucci counter offered a tight, polite smile as she pulled the heavy metal card from the payment terminal. "Sir," she said, keeping her voice discreetly low. "The transaction was declined. The system is showing a hard freeze on this account." Marcus let out an exasperated sigh, adjusting his designer collar. He shot an annoyed glance at the associate, acting as if her incompetence was holding up his valuable time. "Run it again," he commanded. "The chip reader has been acting up all day." The associate obediently inserted the card a second time. The machine beeped instantly. The same harsh red error message flashed across the digital display. "I am sorry, sir," she repeated, her professional smile faltering slightly. "The issuer has reported the card as stolen. It is prompting me to confiscate it, but I will just hand it back to you. Do you have an alternate form of payment?" Vanessa shifted her weight, clicking her manicured nails against her leather handbag. "Marcus just used the other card," she whined loudly enough for the growing line of wealthy shoppers to hear. "We have dinner reservations at Buckhead Village in 30 minutes. Marcus quickly retrieved his personal platinum debit card, linked directly to our joint checking account. He swiped it with a flourish, silently praying the embarrassment would end. The terminal beeped a third time. Declined. The blood completely drained from his face. He frantically tapped the screen, staring at the bright red text, as if reading a foreign language. The line of affluent customers behind them began to murmur. A woman wearing vintage Chanel let out a loud, impatient sigh, making her displeasure known to the entire boutique. Kyle, seeing his brother-in-law floundering, stepped up to the polished glass counter with his chest puffed out. He pulled out his corporate access card, eager to play the financial savior once again. "Let me handle this, Marcus," he said, offering Vanessa a reassuring wink. "Sometimes these corporate algorithms get overly sensitive with luxury purchases. My override card will clear the fraud block." Kyle swiped his card confidently. The machine screamed its rejection. Access denied. Credential revoked. Kyle's confident smirk vanished, instantly replaced by sheer confusion. He pulled out his phone, desperately trying to log into his administrative dashboard, but his screen only displayed a permanent fatal error message. The sales associate looked at the group with a mixture of polite impatience and deep, profound pity. "I can hold the items behind the counter for an hour if you need to contact your banking institution," she offered softly. Vanessa could not handle the mounting humiliation. She snatched her phone from Lily, who had abruptly stopped her live broadcast, looking embarrassed by the sudden lack of funds. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Vanessa hissed, glaring at Marcus. "I am standing here looking like a complete fool in front of half of Atlanta. If you could not afford the luggage, you should have just said so instead of dragging me out here to be humiliated." She spun around on her designer heels and marched out of the boutique, leaving Marcus standing paralyzed at the register. Marcus shoved the useless plastic cards back into his wallet and sprinted out of the boutique, his face burning with intense public shame. He burst through the heavy glass doors of Phipps Plaza, storming into the humid afternoon air. He pulled out his phone and dialed my number. I sat in my home office watching his name flash across my screen. I let it ring 4 times, letting his panic steep before finally hitting answer. I barely had the phone to my ear before he started screaming. "What the hell is going on with the accounts, Chloe?" He yelled, his voice cracking with rage. "Every single card is declining. Kyle is locked out of the accounting portal. We are standing in the middle of a luxury mall looking like absolute beggars. Fix it right now." I took a deep breath, channeling the most convincing tone of panic and submissive anxiety I could muster. "Oh my goodness, Marcus!" I cried out, making my voice tremble slightly. "I have been on hold with the bank for 20 minutes. The fraud department called me right after you left. They said there was massive suspicious activity on the corporate accounts. Someone tried to process thousands of dollars at high-end retail stores, and they flagged it as a coordinated cyber attack. They initiated a hard lockdown on everything to protect our assets." "I am so scared, Marcus." He groaned loudly, pacing the concrete sidewalk outside the mall. "Well, tell them it was us," he snapped. "Tell them to lift the freeze immediately. I need to pay for this luggage." I let out a perfectly timed, anxious sigh, playing my part to absolute perfection. I tried. I really did. But the fraud division elevated the case to a Tier 1 security breach because the purchases did not match our standard corporate spending algorithms. They said the accounts are locked down for a mandatory investigation. I cannot get anything restored until they reopen on Monday morning. I am so sorry, honey. You will just have to use your personal savings for the weekend. The dead silence on the other end of the line was absolute music to my ears. Monday morning was 2 days after their scheduled cruise departure. He was completely trapped. If he admitted to Vanessa that he had no money, she would throw a massive tantrum and the entire boss babe illusion would shatter right there in the parking lot. He needed to save face. He needed to prove he was still the wealthy provider he claimed to be. I heard him swallow hard. "Fine," he muttered, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "Just get it fixed by Monday." He hung up the phone without another word. I opened his personal checking account dashboard on my monitor. I watched as he marched back into the Gucci boutique, desperate to salvage his pride. He authorized the $3,000 payment using his own meager personal savings. The transaction processed slowly, draining the very last drop of cash he had to his name. The account balance refreshed, dropping to exactly $12.40. He had completely bankrupted himself just to buy his ex-wife a set of suitcases. He was now heading into a 2-week luxury vacation, completely broke, possessing no access to credit, and relying entirely on a digital boarding pass that I had already marked for destruction. The financial bleed was finally stopped, and the real punishment was just about to begin. Vanessa did not handle the retail humiliation with grace. Even though Marcus scraped together his last remaining dollars to purchase her luxury luggage, she was absolutely fuming about the public embarrassment. She needed a scapegoat, and Marcus eagerly served me up on a silver platter. To save his bruised ego, he told her I was throwing a jealous tantrum over the cruise and maliciously locked the accounts to spite them. That was all the fuel Vanessa needed. As soon as she returned to her lavish Buckhead condo, the very same condo my hard work secretly financed, she decided to weaponize our local community against me. Vanessa was a master at playing the virtuous victim. She opened her laptop and navigated straight to the private Facebook group for our Atlanta megachurch. It was a massive digital congregation of over 10,000 highly active members, where gossip was frequently disguised as urgent prayer requests. She drafted a masterclass in emotional manipulation. She wrote a long, tear-jerking post asking the congregation to pray for her blended family during a season of spiritual warfare. She painted a vivid, heartbreaking picture of her innocent 15-year-old daughter, Lily, who had supposedly been looking forward to this family healing trip for months. Then she aimed her crosshairs directly at me. She described me as a wealthy, vindictive, and deeply insecure stepmother using financial abuse to control her husband and punish a child. She claimed I deliberately cut off their vacation funds at the checkout counter purely out of malicious spite because I could not handle the beautiful, unbroken bond between a father and his first family. She sprinkled the post with carefully selected Bible verses about greed and forgiveness, pleading with the church elders to pray for my bitter heart. She made sure to tag Marcus, acting as the supportive ex-wife, standing by his side against his toxic current marriage. The post was perfectly engineered to trigger the exact type of self-righteous outrage that thrives in megachurch communities. She hit publish and let the digital poison seep into the water supply. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Within 2 hours, the post had hundreds of shares and thousands of comments. The social media firestorm raged out of control. My cell phone began to vibrate off the desk with a relentless stream of notifications. The church aunties, the community leaders, and women I had hosted in my own home rushed to judge a situation they knew absolutely nothing about. My direct messages were flooded with toxic vitriol wrapped in false religious concern. Sister Chloe, I am praying that God removes this bitter spirit from your heart, wrote one prominent choir director. Another message from a senior deacon accused me of displaying deeply unchristian behavior by financially punishing a child for the parent's past mistakes. Mutual friends sent paragraphs scolding me for embarrassing Marcus publicly and demanding I repent for attempting to ruin a sacred family vacation. They called me petty, jealous, and wicked. They told me I needed to seek immediate pastoral counseling to address my severe control issues. The sheer volume of hate pouring into my inbox would have broken an ordinary woman. It would have forced a weaker person to panic, delete their accounts, or cave to the immense social pressure by unlocking the bank cards just to stop the public bleeding. I am not an ordinary woman. I sat back in my plush leather office chair, poured myself a steaming cup of chamomile tea, and watched the notifications roll in with absolute serene detachment. I did not shed a single tear. I did not write a frantic defensive comment trying to explain my side of the story. Engaging with a mob only validates their delusion. Instead, I treated the viral hate campaign like a highly lucrative data collection exercise. I methodically opened every single hateful message, every slanderous comment, and every shared post. I took high-resolution screenshots of everything. I captured the names, the timestamps, and the exact defamatory language used by Vanessa and her eager followers. I opened a new folder on my encrypted hard drive and labeled it Exhibit B Defamation and Libel. I dragged hundreds of screenshots into the file, meticulously organizing the evidence. Vanessa thought she was destroying my reputation in Atlanta, but she was actually handing me a slam-dunk civil lawsuit wrapped in a bow. By publicly stating that I was financially abusing her and committing malicious acts, she crossed the legal line from petty gossip into actionable written defamation. Every single church member who shared her post and added their own slanderous remarks was simply adding more zeros to the settlement she would eventually owe me. I took a slow sip of my tea, savoring the warmth. Let them call me unchristian. Let them call me bitter. Let them preach about forgiveness and grace while they blindly defend a woman who was actively helping her ex-husband embezzle thousands of dollars from a Black-owned business. The hypocrisy was rich, but the impending legal payout would be even richer. I forwarded the entire evidence folder to Samantha, my attorney, instructing her to draft the cease and desist orders. I told her to hold them until the federal trap was fully sprung. I wanted Vanessa to feel completely invincible right up until the very moment the handcuffs clicked shut. They assumed my silence was a clear sign of weakness and defeat. They thought I was cowering in my bedroom, completely overwhelmed by the crushing weight of public scrutiny and community abandonment. They were completely unaware that my silence was actually the careful preparation of a highly calculated predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Marcus and Vanessa were celebrating a victory they had not actually won. Their digital smear campaign was nothing more than a temporary distraction from the absolute financial ruin heading straight toward them. I placed my empty teacup gently on the desk and smiled softly. The digital assault did not end with Facebook posts and church gossip. Vanessa, realizing that her initial smear campaign had not forced me into immediate submission, decided to deploy her ultimate weapon. She weaponized her own 15-year-old daughter. Later that evening, a new notification popped up on my screen. Lily had gone live simultaneously on TikTok and Instagram. She had amassed a decent following over the past year, mostly teenagers, local church youth group members, and neighborhood gossips eager for drama. I clicked on the broadcast and watched the heavily filtered video load. Lily was sitting on the edge of her plush bed, wrapped in a fluffy designer blanket, wiping away perfectly orchestrated tears. Her performance was Oscar-worthy, clearly directed by her mother standing just out of frame. "Guys, I did not want to make this video." Lily began, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. "But I am just so heartbroken right now and I need to speak my truth." She paused, taking a dramatic, shaky breath for the camera. "My dad and my mom have been saving up for months to take me on a family healing trip. We have been through so much and we just needed this time together. But my stepmom canceled our funds at the very last minute. She literally froze the bank accounts while we were buying my vacation clothes." The chat on the side of the screen began scrolling rapidly with sympathetic comments and angry emojis from her followers. Lily looked down at her lap, letting a single tear fall perfectly down her cheek. "She hates me," Lily whimpered, her voice cracking. "She has always hated me because my mom and dad share a special bond that she will never have." Then she delivered the exact line Vanessa had fed her. The line designed to completely destroy me. "My stepmom hates me because she is barren," Lily said, staring directly into the camera lens. "She is barren, and she knows she can never give my dad a real family of his own. So now she is trying to ruin mine out of pure bitter jealousy." I sat in my office staring at the screen as those horrific words echoed through the silent room. The live chat instantly exploded with outrage. Hundreds of viewers were sending hateful messages validating Lily's fabricated pain and condemning my supposed cruelty without a second thought. The word barren struck me with the force of a physical blow. It was not just a cruel teenage insult. It was a deeply personal, calculated strike at my most vulnerable medical history. 2 years ago, I went through extensive fertility testing, resulting in a painful diagnosis that required multiple invasive surgeries. It was a private, devastating journey that I had only ever shared with one person in the entire world: my husband. Marcus had held my hand in the doctor's office. He had watched me recover from the physical trauma of those procedures. He had sworn to me that our love was enough and that my medical struggles would always remain strictly between us. Now I knew the absolute truth. Marcus had taken my deepest trauma and handed it directly to his ex-wife to use as live ammunition against me. Vanessa had then fed that exact trauma to her teenage daughter, broadcasting my private medical history to thousands of strangers on the internet, just to win a petty public relations war and force me to unlock a credit card. The sheer viciousness of that betrayal superseded any financial theft. They were not just trying to steal my money anymore, they were actively trying to strip away my humanity and crush my spirit. The live stream acted as a massive catalyst. The internet mob mobilized with terrifying speed, fueled by the false narrative of a wicked, barren stepmother punishing an innocent teenager. Within hours, the attack spilled over from personal social media directly into my professional life. Keyboard warriors, who had never even set foot in my state, began swarming my business pages. My luxury travel and wealth management firm relies heavily on flawless public perception and pristine client reviews. Suddenly, my Google and Yelp pages were being aggressively review bombed. Scores of one-star ratings flooded the system, accompanied by scathing comments accusing the founder of being a child abuser, a toxic narcissist, and a fraudulent monster. They flooded my professional inbox with threats demanding that my business be shut down. The digital assault was relentless and highly coordinated. By the following morning, the damage began to manifest in the real world. My office phone lines lit up incessantly. Several of my high-net-worth clients called my executive assistants expressing deep concern over the massive online drama surrounding my name. Wealthy clients do not tolerate public scandals. They demand absolute discretion, stability, and peace of mind from the people managing their assets. Having my personal life dragged through the mud on teenage social media platforms was a direct threat to my corporate credibility and my bottom line. My lead public relations manager rushed into my office, practically begging me to release a statement to mitigate the damage. She drafted a polite professional response, explaining that this was a private family matter and asking for respect. I read her carefully worded draft and immediately deleted it. I flatly refused to play defense. Issuing any kind of statement would only show them that their digital terrorism was actually working. It would signal that they had successfully pierced my armor. I told my team to hold the line, flag the fake reviews for removal, and assure our actual clients that the situation was being handled legally and swiftly. The mob wanted to see me bleed. They wanted me to break under the immense social pressure and surrender the funds to make the pain stop. But I took the searing pain of that marital betrayal and forged it into unbreakable steel. I let them rage, knowing the final trap was firmly set. The digital mob was ravenous, but my husband's family threw more gasoline onto the fire. Keisha Marcus' older sister felt left out of the spotlight. She happily sipped champagne on my dime at Phipps Plaza just days prior, but now positioned herself as the moral authority on my marriage. She uploaded a 10-minute video to her Facebook page, cross-posting it to every church group she could find. Wearing her Sunday best, she shook her head with performative disappointment, telling her audience she was defending Vanessa and Lily because the truth needed to be heard. She claimed I was a narcissistic control freak who used my wealth to hold her brother hostage, spinning a ridiculous narrative about how I isolated Marcus from his family. She declared freezing the vacation funds was financial abuse meant to break a teenage girl's spirit. She urged the community to pray for Marcus to leave his toxic wife. Her video poured fresh fuel on the flames, but what her husband did was infinitely more dangerous. Kyle was a certified public accountant who knew exactly how to inflict maximum corporate damage. Realizing the sudden revocation of his administrative access meant I was actively looking at the books, he panicked. In a desperate attempt to cover his tracks and preemptively discredit any allegations of embezzlement, he attacked my professional reputation on LinkedIn. It was a calculated strike aimed directly at my corporate clients and industry peers. He posted a vague but highly damaging professional update writing that his accounting firm was severing ties with my luxury travel agency due to irreconcilable ethical differences. He layered in corporate buzzwords, subtly implying my business was facing severe liquidity issues due to erratic mismanagement. He positioned himself as the ethical whistleblower, stepping away from a volatile female founder running her empire into the ground. The sheer brazenness of his post was astounding. He systematically drained my accounts to fund a fake lifestyle for his brother-in-law's ex-wife, yet dared to publicly question my liquidity. A trusted accountant publicly distancing himself from a financial firm is the ultimate red flag in my industry, triggering panic among investors and audits from high-net-worth clients. Kyle was trying to destroy my livelihood before I could expose his massive fraud, thinking, if he ruined my credibility first, no one would believe my allegations. He banked on his white male privilege and certified credentials to outweigh my truth, assuming the business community would blindly trust the steady white accountant over the emotional black female founder going through a messy divorce. The dual attack from Keisha and Kyle sent my public relations team into a frenzy. My lead publicist stormed into my office, clutching her tablet, showing the rapidly climbing engagement metrics on Kyle's LinkedIn post. She was practically hyperventilating, begging me to issue an immediate comprehensive statement, refuting the claims and providing proof of our firm's financial health. She warned that silence in the corporate world is often interpreted as an admission of guilt, drafting a multifaceted crisis management plan, including a press release, a video response, and a detailed open letter to our clients. I listened to her frantic presentation, my face remaining impassive. I took the tablet, closed the application, and handed it back, telling her absolutely not. We will not issue a single word of defense. My publicist stared at me as if I had completely lost my mind, arguing we were bleeding credibility by the hour, while clients demanded answers about the supposed liquidity crisis. I leaned across my desk, clasping my hands together. Let them dig the hole deeper, I said, my voice dropping to a low, icy register. When the dirt finally caves in, I want them fully submerged. I explained fighting a public relations battle was a waste of valuable time because we were facilitating a federal criminal investigation. Every lie Kyle posted on a public platform was another piece of evidence for the fraud prosecutors. By trying to cover his tracks with public defamation, he was simply tying the noose tighter around his own neck. I ordered my team to document every comment, preserve every post, and reassure panicking clients through private, confidential phone calls. There would be no public spectacle from my end. With the public relations team managed, I locked my office door and dedicated the rest of my afternoon to finalizing the physical logistics of the trap. The cruise was scheduled to depart from the port of Miami in less than 48 hours. My luxury travel firm is not just a standard booking agency. We manage immense portfolios for elite clients, which gives us significant leverage within the hospitality industry. What Marcus and his accomplices failed to realize was my firm actually owns a 15% stakeholder share in the specific luxury cruise line they were attempting to board. I did not just have a customer service contact. I had the direct personal cell phone number of the cruise line's chief executive officer. I dialed the CEO and explained the situation with absolute professional clarity. I informed him the VIP Grand Loft Suite, booked under Marcus and Vanessa's names, was secured using stolen corporate funds, currently under active federal investigation. I told him I needed those specific boarding passes instantly nullified, but needed the digital interface to look perfectly normal until the exact moment they attempted to scan their tickets at the physical boarding gate. The CEO was more than happy to oblige a major shareholder. We coordinated with the port security director, ensuring the electronic turnstiles would trigger a hard denial accompanied by a silent alarm to the terminal security office. I mapped out the precise timing of their arrival, their lounge access, and their path to the gangway. I wanted them to walk all the way to the absolute edge of paradise before I violently pulled the floor out from under them. The blazing Florida sun beat down on the sleek, black-stretched limousine as it pulled up to the curb at the port of Miami. I watched the entire spectacle unfold in real time, sitting in my air-conditioned office hundreds of miles away, monitoring the live feeds and security access cameras I had arranged. Marcus stepped out of the vehicle first, adjusting his crisp white linen shirt and checking his expensive watch. He looked around the bustling terminal, taking a deep breath of the salty ocean air, acting as if he personally owned the entire port. Vanessa slid out right behind him, wearing a massive wide-brimmed straw hat and a flowing silk resort dress that my hard work had undoubtedly paid for. Keisha and Kyle followed, stepping onto the pavement with the sheer unearned confidence of people who believed they had successfully pulled off the ultimate financial heist of the century. Lily was already holding her phone high above her head on an expensive stabilizer stick, broadcasting their glamorous arrival directly to her thousands of eager followers. The camera panned across the massive white hull of the luxury cruise ship towering over the terminal. Lily squealed with delight, flipping the camera lens to show her followers the digital boarding pass glowing brightly on her screen. The square black barcode was perfectly intact, completely visible, and seemingly ready to be scanned. They genuinely believed they had won the war. They looked at those little black squares on their mobile applications and saw a guaranteed golden ticket to paradise. The cruise line interface was intentionally designed to look completely normal, functioning smoothly, and displaying their Grand Loft Suite status in bold gold lettering. The porters rushed forward, eager to assist the wealthy-looking family, piling their heavy designer luggage onto the brass carts. Marcus handed the head porter a crisp $100 bill, folding his arms and puffing out his chest. He looked like a man who had successfully conquered the world. He believed my absolute silence over the past 48 hours was a clear admission of total defeat. He assumed I was cowering in Atlanta, completely broken by the social media firestorm and terrified by Kyle's aggressive professional threats on the internet. Vanessa leaned into the camera frame, blowing a kiss to the viewers and loudly thanking all the prayer warriors who had supported their family healing journey against the forces of jealousy and bitterness. Keisha chimed in from the background, shouting that God always provides for the righteous. Kyle simply stood there, with a smug, self-satisfied grin, convinced his accounting sabotage had successfully strong-armed me into unlocking the corporate vault. They strutted toward the massive glass doors of the terminal, oblivious to the fact that their digital barcodes were nothing more than beautiful, worthless pixels. Marcus felt like an absolute king walking through the sliding glass doors of the cruise terminal. In his mind, he had masterfully played the game and emerged completely victorious. He had successfully manipulated his teenage daughter, weaponized his church community, and utilized his brother-in-law to financially corner me. He honestly believed his aggressive tactics had bullied me into total submission. He assumed that when faced with the overwhelming threat of public humiliation and professional ruin, I had quietly logged into the banking portal, lifted the hard freeze, and authorized the funds to let the trip proceed, just to make the nightmare stop. He felt powerful, untouchable, and completely justified in his betrayal. The group bypassed the massive winding lines of regular passengers sweating in the crowded main hall. Marcus confidently led his entourage straight toward the velvet ropes of the exclusive VIP priority boarding lane, designated specifically for suite guests. A smiling attendant checked their names against a tablet, unclipped the velvet rope, and ushered them into the luxurious pre-boarding lounge. The arrogance radiating from the group reached a fever pitch as they settled into the plush leather seating of the exclusive lounge. Waiters circulated immediately, offering them complimentary flutes of chilled champagne and silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. Lily positioned her phone on a marble side table, ensuring the perfect angle to capture their luxurious surroundings for her live audience. The viewer count on her broadcast was steadily climbing, fueled by the massive neighborhood drama they had intentionally stoked back home. Marcus leaned back on the expensive leather sofa, crossing his legs and taking a long, satisfying sip of his champagne. He looked directly into Lily's camera lens, deciding it was the perfect moment to twist the knife and mock me publicly. He raised his glass to the screen, flashing a bright white smile. "Here is to family," he declared, his voice dripping with arrogance and condescension. "Here is to staying strong when miserable, bitter people try to drag you down. Never let a jealous spirit stop your blessings." Vanessa clinked her glass against his, letting out a loud theatrical laugh. She leaned into the frame, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "That is right, baby," she cooed. "Real families stick together, and no amount of hateful financial abuse can stop our healing. We are about to have the absolute best 2 weeks of our lives." Kyle, sitting across from them, chimed in with his own calculated jab. He raised his glass and smirked, telling the audience that it always pays to have smart financial planning when certain erratic business owners try to disrupt your assets. They were bathing in their own toxic superiority, absolutely certain they had won the ultimate victory. They were laughing loudly, mocking my pain and celebrating their theft in front of thousands of people. They felt completely secure sitting in that air-conditioned VIP bubble, surrounded by marble and fresh flowers, just mere footsteps away from the gangway. They had their heavy luggage checked, their champagne poured, and their barcodes glowing brightly on their phones. They thought they had finally crossed the finish line. They had no idea they were sitting directly in the center of the kill zone, waiting for the federal trap to spring shut. Marcus settled deeper into the buttery soft leather of the VIP lounge armchair, letting the cool air conditioning wash over his skin. He took another long, slow sip of his freshly poured mimosa, savoring the sweet tang of orange juice mixed with expensive champagne. Around him, the atmosphere hummed with the quiet, privileged murmur of wealth. Wealth he had successfully hijacked without a single consequence. Vanessa was busy taking endless selfies near a towering tropical floral arrangement, posing and preening for her digital audience. Keisha and Kyle were loading up small porcelain plates at the exclusive complimentary seafood buffet, piling on fresh shrimp and artisanal cheeses. Lily was still chattering to her followers, completely absorbed in her digital validation and broadcasting their victory to the world. Marcus watched them all, feeling an overwhelming surge of masculine pride inflating his chest. He had delivered the ultimate prize. He was the man of the hour, the undisputed anchor of his family. He had faced down his intimidating, high-powered wife and forced her to surrender her vast resources to his will. The sharp tension that had gripped his chest outside the Gucci boutique was completely gone now, replaced by an intoxicating cocktail of pure adrenaline and unchecked ego. He had called my bluff and won the war. In his mind, I had finally recognized my proper place. I had realized that my money could not buy his blind loyalty, and that I needed to fall in line if I wanted to keep my husband happy. But simply winning the financial standoff was not enough for Marcus. He possessed a deeply ingrained cruel streak, a desperate need to establish absolute psychological dominance over the woman who normally held the purse strings. He wanted to make sure I was sitting in Atlanta feeling entirely defeated, small, and adequately punished for daring to lock him out of my corporate accounts. He wanted to twist the knife one last time before he boarded the luxury vessel and disappeared into the sunset. He wanted to ensure that while he was sailing the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, I was drowning in regret and begging for his eventual return. He pulled his sleek smartphone from the breast pocket of his crisp linen shirt. He stared at the blank message thread between us. I had not texted him since he demanded the emergency travel cash. My silence was a white flag, but Marcus wanted to force me to wave it frantically. He wanted me crying. He wanted me apologizing and admitting I was wrong. He began tapping his thumbs against the glass screen, crafting a message designed to inflict maximum emotional damage. He typed deliberately, pausing to find the most condescending, arrogant words possible. He typed the message, letting his thumb hover over the send button to admire his own handiwork. "We are boarding the VIP suite. My daughter needs both her parents there. Sorry you could not understand real family dynamics. Do better, and maybe we can fix our marriage when I get back." He hit send, watching the blue bubble fly across the screen and land squarely in our chat history. He smirked, locking the screen and sliding the phone back into his pocket. He picked up his mimosa, feeling like a legendary conqueror who had just planted his flag on enemy soil. Hundreds of miles away in the sterile quiet of my corporate office, the bright screen of my primary cellular device lit up. The notification chime sliced through the heavy silence of the room. I sat perfectly still in my ergonomic chair, flanked by 3 massive curved monitors, illuminating my face in a pale blue glow. The left monitor displayed the live security feed from the Port of Miami 5IP lounge, courtesy of my direct connection with the cruise line security director. I could see Marcus sitting on the leather sofa holding his champagne glass, looking incredibly pleased with himself. The center monitor displayed the live GPS tracking data linked to their digital itinerary, showing their precise physical location down to the square meter. They were exactly 50 yards away from the final security scanning checkpoint. The right monitor displayed the incoming text message from my husband. I picked up the phone and read the words slowly, letting the sheer magnitude of his arrogance wash over my brain. "We are boarding the VIP suite. My daughter needs both her parents there. Sorry you could not understand real family dynamics. Do better, and maybe we can fix our marriage when I get back." I read the message a second time, analyzing the profound delusion required to type those exact words. He was sitting in a luxury terminal paid for by stolen funds, surrounded by accomplices preparing to board a ship he had no actual right to be on, and he was lecturing me about doing better. He actually believed he held the high moral ground. He thought dangling the possibility of fixing our marriage was a grand prize I would eagerly wait 2 weeks to claim. He thought I was sitting in my office crying over his absence, mourning a union he had thoroughly disgraced and disrespected. I did not shed a single tear. I did not feel a single pang of heartbreak. Looking at that text message, I felt nothing but a cold, razor-sharp clarity. It was the final, undeniable confirmation that Marcus was entirely beyond redemption. He was a parasitic force who would continually drain my lifeblood if I did not completely sever the connection right now. I watched the live video feed as the VIP lounge attendant approached their seating area, politely announcing that the priority boarding queue was now officially open for suite guests. I watched Marcus stand up, button his expensive linen shirt, and gesture grandly for Vanessa and Lily to lead the way toward the gangway. They gathered their designer carry-on bags, laughing and smiling, heading straight toward the digital turnstiles. The timing was absolutely perfect. The pieces were perfectly aligned on the board, and Marcus had just handed me the exact opening I needed to deliver the final killing blow. I rested my fingers on the cool keys of my mechanical keyboard. The moment required absolute precision. I did not want to unleash the full force of my retaliation all at once. I needed to hook him first to make him feel the absolute peak of his own fabricated power before I shattered it completely. I typed 2 simple words and hit send. Wait, what? I shifted my gaze to the live security feed on my left monitor. Marcus was about 20 yards away from the digital turnstiles, leading his pack with his chest puffed out. I watched his smartphone screen light up in his hand. He glanced down at the notification and stopped walking. A massive, arrogant smirk spread across his face. He actually turned to Vanessa and showed her the screen pointing at my message. They both laughed. He clearly believed I was panicking. He thought the reality of his departure had finally hit me, and I was frantically begging him to turn around and come home. He thought he had successfully broken my spirit and forced me to submit to his toxic demands. He thought those 2 words were a desperate plea for his attention. He was utterly, entirely wrong. I did not give him the satisfaction of replying to my bait. Instead, I began typing the actual response, my fingers flying across the keys with ruthless efficiency. I completely understand family dynamics, I typed, making sure every single word was perfectly calculated to inflict maximum psychological damage. That is exactly why I gifted your $45,000 suite to Maria, the lead janitor at my firm, so she and her 5 kids could have a real family trip. I hit send and watched the message travel through the digital void. Maria was a hard-working single mother who cleaned my office building every single night. She scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans to provide for her children, never asking for a handout and never complaining about her circumstances. She possessed more integrity in her pinky finger than Marcus and his entire group of accomplices combined. While Marcus was busy stealing money to fund a fake boss babe lifestyle for Vanessa, Maria was working double shifts just to keep the lights on. I had personally handed Maria the transferred suite tickets the day before, along with a generous travel stipend, ensuring her family would experience the luxury they truly deserved. Marcus used to walk right past Maria in the hallway without ever acknowledging her existence. Now, she and her 5 children were currently getting settled into the grand loft suite, drinking sparkling cider and enjoying the private balcony he thought he had stolen for himself. I kept my eyes glued to the security monitor. Marcus looked down at his phone as the long paragraph populated on his screen. I watched the arrogant smirk instantly vanish from his face. His confident posture crumbled. He stopped dead in his tracks, causing Vanessa to bump directly into his back. He stared at the glowing screen, his brain clearly struggling to process the impossible information he was reading. He read the words over and over again, trying to make sense of the devastating reality. Maria, the janitor, 5 kids, the $45,000 suite. The realization hit him like a physical blow to the stomach, but I was not even close to being finished with him yet. I immediately began typing the second phase of my execution, ensuring he had absolutely no time to recover his breath. Oh, and my luxury travel firm owns a 15% stakeholder share in that specific cruise line. I typed, my eyes locked on his frozen figure on the security feed. I called the chief executive officer personally. Your barcodes were deactivated 48 hours ago. You are holding digital ghost tickets. I pressed send and leaned back in my ergonomic chair, crossing my arms. I watched Marcus physically react to the second message. The color completely drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and sickly under the bright fluorescent lights of the terminal. His shoulders slumped, and his hands began to shake visibly. Vanessa was tugging at his linen shirt, demanding to know why they were just standing in the middle of the walkway while the priority boarding line was moving forward. Lily was complaining loudly that he was ruining her live broadcast by standing completely still. Keisha and Kyle were looking at him with growing confusion, completely unaware that the financial empire they thought they had conquered had just collapsed directly onto their heads. Marcus could not speak. He was hyperventilating, his chest heaving as the sheer magnitude of his miscalculation crashed over him. He frantically unlocked his phone, abandoning his messaging application, and opening the cruise line mobile portal. He desperately wanted to believe I was bluffing. He needed to believe that his careful planning and Kyle's accounting sabotage had somehow protected their boarding passes. He pulled up the digital ticket screen, holding his breath. The interface still showed the beautiful blue background and the golden sweet letters, but he needed to be sure. He dragged his trembling thumb down the glass screen to force the application to refresh its data directly from the cruise line servers. I watched the tiny loading circle spin on his screen. It spun for 2 agonizing seconds as the application communicated with the mainframe. Then the brutal, undeniable reality replaced his golden ticket. The barcode completely vanished from the screen. In its place, a massive red banner appeared, blocking out all his itinerary details. The text was bold, unforgiving, and absolute. Ticket void. The automated system immediately logged him out of the guest portal, stripping away his profile and returning him to the standard login screen. His account no longer existed in their active passenger database. He was completely scrubbed from the manifest. Marcus stared at the void notification, his entire world shattering into a million irreparable pieces. He was standing in a luxury terminal surrounded by wealthy passengers, with his ex-wife, his daughter, his sister, and his brother-in-law, all expecting him to lead them onto a massive ship. He had absolutely no money, no access to credit, and no boarding pass. He was holding nothing but an empty digital shell. The trap had officially sprung shut, securely locking him inside. He looked up from his phone, his eyes wide with sheer unadulterated panic, staring blankly toward the security scanners. He was completely and utterly trapped. Vanessa noticed Marcus frozen in the middle of the walkway and let out an exaggerated sigh of annoyance. She had no time for his sudden hesitation. She was ready to board her luxury vessel and bask in the tropical sun. Pushing past him with a dramatic swish of her silk resort dress, she took the lead. She signaled for Lily, Keisha, and Kyle to follow her, waving her perfectly manicured hand toward the exclusive priority boarding lane. She approached the sleek digital turnstiles where a uniformed port agent stood ready to process the elite suite guests. Vanessa held her head high, exuding the false confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable. She had loaded her digital boarding pass into her mobile wallet earlier that morning, so the cached barcode was still proudly displayed on her screen, completely unaffected by the remote server wipe that had just devastated Marcus. She approached the glowing green glass of the scanner and confidently pressed her phone screen against the optical reader. She expected a pleasant chime and the glass doors to swing open, welcoming her to paradise. Instead, the machine emitted a harsh, abrasive buzzer sound. The soft green lights instantly turned a violent flashing red. The digital display above the turnstile flashed a bold "access denied" message. Vanessa blinked, pulling her phone back and scoffing at the machine. She assumed it was a simple technical glitch, a minor inconvenience for someone of her elevated status. She wiped the screen with her thumb and pressed it firmly against the glass reader a second time. The machine screamed its rejection again, louder this time, drawing the attention of the regular passengers waiting in the massive queues behind the velvet ropes. The uniformed port agent stepped forward, blocking the turnstile path with a polite but firm posture. "Ma'am," the agent said professionally, "your boarding pass is registering as invalid. I need you to step out of the priority lane and visit the guest services desk to resolve this ticket issue." Vanessa stared at the agent, as if the woman had just spoken a foreign language. "Step aside," Vanessa asked, her voice rising in pitch and volume. "Are you completely out of your mind? I am booked in the Grand Loft Suite. We are VIP guests. This machine is obviously broken, and I'm not standing in a customer service line with general admission passengers." The port agent maintained a stoic expression, clearly accustomed to dealing with entitled travelers. "I understand your frustration, ma'am, but the system shows this reservation has been completely voided. You are not on the active manifest. I cannot allow you to pass this checkpoint." Vanessa completely lost her temper. The serene boss babe persona vanished instantly, replaced by sheer aggressive entitlement. She pointed a sharp acrylic nail directly at the agent's face. "Do you have any idea who I am?" she screamed, her voice echoing off the high ceilings of the terminal. "My family spends more money in a day than you make in a year. You are going to open these doors right now, or I will personally ensure you lose your job by the end of this shift." Seeing the situation escalating rapidly, Kyle decided it was time to step in and flex his authority. He pushed past Keisha and marched directly up to the security checkpoint, standing shoulder to shoulder with Vanessa. He puffed out his chest, looking down at the port agent, using his loudest, most intimidating corporate voice. "Listen to me very carefully," he demanded, jabbing his finger toward the digital scanner. "I am a certified public accountant, and I manage the multi-million-dollar corporate accounts that funded this exact trip. I personally authorized the wire transfers for this suite. If you do not bypass this glitch and let my family board this vessel immediately, I will file a massive civil lawsuit against this cruise line for breach of contract and emotional distress." He crossed his arms, looking incredibly smug, firmly believing his aggressive professional threats would bully the hourly employee into submission. The port agent did not flinch. Instead, she calmly reached for the radio clipped to her shoulder and requested immediate terminal security assistance at the VIP gate. Within seconds, 4 burly security guards in dark uniforms materialized from the surrounding corridors. They quickly formed a tactical semicircle around the group, placing hands resting firmly near their utility belts. "Sir," a senior security officer commanded, pointing directly at Kyle, "you need to lower your voice and move your party away from the boarding area immediately. You are disrupting terminal operations and trespassing in a restricted zone without valid tickets. Step back right now." Keisha gasped, clutching her designer handbag against her chest as the reality of the situation began to set in. Lily was standing just a few feet away, completely failing to realize she should stop recording. Her smartphone was still held high, capturing every single second of the humiliating ordeal and broadcasting it live to her thousands of followers. The chat window on her screen was moving at warp speed. The supportive comments had completely vanished, replaced by a tidal wave of laughing emojis and ruthless mockery. Her viewers were eagerly watching the self-proclaimed perfect family get physically blocked from their luxury vacation and humiliated by port security. The entire terminal had gone quiet, watching the spectacle unfold. Thousands of regular passengers waiting in the general lines were pointing, laughing, and recording the meltdown on their own devices. Amidst the screaming, the threats, and the aggressive security presence, Marcus stood completely paralyzed. He had not moved a single inch from where he read my devastating text message. He did not rush forward to defend his ex-wife. He did not stand shoulder to shoulder with his brother-in-law. He did not attempt to shield his daughter from the embarrassment. He simply stood there, staring down at the voided screen of his mobile phone, his mind entirely broken by the sheer magnitude of his defeat. He knew exactly why the scanner was flashing red. He knew the tickets were completely gone. He knew my money was permanently out of reach. But worst of all, he knew this absolute public humiliation was just the opening act. The real nightmare was still on its way. Marcus snapped out of his total paralysis as the chaotic volume of the terminal reached a deafening crescendo. The sound of Vanessa's shrill voice echoing off the high glass ceilings finally pierced through his state of absolute shock. He looked up from his voided digital ticket and saw the harsh reality of his collapsing world. 4 heavily armed terminal security guards were physically advancing on his brother-in-law. Kyle was stepping backward, his confident corporate posture completely disintegrating under the threat of imminent arrest. Dozens of smartphone cameras were pointed directly at their group, capturing every single miserable second of their epic downfall. The public spectacle was becoming entirely unmanageable. Marcus knew he had to stop the bleeding immediately. He still foolishly believed that this was simply an aggressive power play. He thought I was just throwing a massive digital temper tantrum to teach him a harsh lesson about respect. In his deeply flawed mind, he assumed that if he just commanded me to stop the embarrassment, I would fold and restore order to his chaotic reality. His hands were shaking so violently, he nearly dropped his expensive smartphone on the polished concrete floor. He fumbled with the screen, swiping away the useless cruise application and opening our text message thread. He ignored the message about Maria and the janitorial staff. He ignored the information about the 15% stakeholder share. He only focused on his desperate need to escape the blazing spotlight of public humiliation. His thumbs pounded against the digital keyboard, fueled by a toxic mixture of sheer panic and lingering masculine arrogance. He refused to beg politely. He demanded compliance. "Turn the tickets back on right now," he typed, his breath hitching in his chest. "Stop being a vindictive psycho. People are actively watching us, and security is getting involved. Unlock the barcodes, Chloe. We can talk about everything else later. Just fix this immediately." He hit send and stared at the delivery receipt. The word "delivered" appeared under his frantic text block. He waited for the little typing bubble to appear. When it did not show up right away, he hit the call button, attempting to force a live confrontation. The call rang exactly 1 time before immediately diverting to my pre-recorded voicemail greeting. He pulled the phone away from his ear, glaring at the screen. He was sweating profusely now, the heavy Florida humidity suddenly feeling incredibly oppressive despite the powerful terminal air conditioning. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, watching Vanessa completely lose her mind at the boarding gate. She was screaming that her luggage was already on the ship and demanding compensation. Lily was crying real tears now, having finally realized that the luxury vacation she bragged about to her entire high school was officially dead in the water. Marcus looked back down at his screen, praying for a response. He needed me to save him from the monstrous situation he had created. He needed his wealthy wife to bail him out one last time. I sat in my pristine, quiet office, staring at the frantic text message illuminating my third monitor. I did not feel a single ounce of pity for the man sweating in that terminal. I watched his desperate attempt to regain control, reading the words "vindictive psycho" with a cold, detached amusement. He was still trying to gaslight me while actively drowning in the consequences of his own severe financial crimes. He still believed he possessed the leverage to demand anything from me. It was time to permanently disabuse him of that dangerous notion. I placed my hands on the keyboard for the very last time in our relationship. I did not type a long emotional paragraph explaining my pain. I did not defend my sanity against his pathetic insults. I delivered the absolute final stroke of the blade. "Stand right there, Marcus." I typed, my eyes locked on the live security feed showing his hunched, panicked figure. "Look over your left shoulder. The Miami PD and the FBI field agents are walking up behind you right now." I gave them a 500-page dossier on your and Kyle's corporate embezzlement. Enjoy the Bahamas. I pressed send and blocked his number completely, permanently, severing his access to my phone, my business, and my life. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the mahogany desk to watch the live feed. I watched the text message register on his device. I saw Marcus physically stiffen as his eyes scanned the short, devastating paragraph. His brain finally grasped the absolute finality of his situation. This was not a marital dispute over a canceled anniversary trip. This was a highly coordinated federal sting operation, and he was the primary target. The color instantly vanished from his neck and face, leaving him looking like a ghost, standing in the middle of the vibrant tropical terminal. The loud screaming of his ex-wife and the crying of his daughter faded entirely into the background noise of his mind. A new sound began to cut through the terminal ambiance. It was not the gentle hum of excited passengers or the polite announcements of the boarding staff. It was the heavy, synchronized footsteps of tactical boots marching purposefully across the polished marble floors. A sharp burst of static crackled from a police radio directly behind him. Marcus froze, his entire body turning rigid with primal terror. He slowly, mechanically turned his head, looking over his left shoulder, exactly as I had instructed. He did not see the luxury cruise ship waiting to whisk him away to paradise. He saw the grim, unsmiling faces of federal law enforcement officers cutting straight through the crowd. They were moving with absolute, undeniable purpose, walking past the velvet ropes and the confused onlookers directly toward him and Kyle. The illusion of his victory evaporated completely instantly, replaced by the terrifying, crushing weight of the federal justice system. The ultimate trap had officially sprung shut. 4 federal agents wearing crisp navy windbreakers, emblazoned with the bright yellow letters FBI, moved in perfect synchronization with 2 uniformed Miami police officers. They did not rush, but their strides ate up the distance with terrifying authority. They bypassed the velvet ropes of the VIP lane, completely ignoring the protests of the stunned port security personnel. The crowd of thousands of waiting passengers collectively gasped and stepped back, forming a wide, silent circle around the doomed group. Marcus felt his knees buckle as the lead agent, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a completely impassive face, stopped exactly 2 feet in front of him. "Marcus Hayes and Kyle Jenkins," the agent asked, his voice booming over the terminal ambiance. The question was a mere formality. The agents already had their targets positively identified from multiple angles. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, to offer some pathetic excuse or plead for a private conversation, but his vocal cords were completely paralyzed. Kyle, stepping back from the port security guard, finally noticed the heavy federal presence closing in around them. His arrogant posture evaporated into thin air. He raised his hands instinctively, palms facing outward, in a gesture of pure, panicked surrender. "Officer, there must be some massive mistake," Kyle stammered, his voice pitching high with raw terror. "I am a licensed, certified public accountant. We are just trying to board a family vacation." The lead agent did not blink or show a single ounce of sympathy. He pulled a thick, folded legal document from his jacket pocket. "Marcus Hayes and Kyle Jenkins, you are both under arrest for federal wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The heavy words hit the group like a physical shockwave, reverberating through the terminal. Before Kyle could utter another syllable of protest, 2 agents stepped forward and forcefully spun him around. The sharp metallic click of heavy steel handcuffs ratcheting tightly around his wrists echoed loudly through the cavernous room. Kyle gasped in shock as his arms were wrenched behind his back, his custom-tailored blazer bunching up awkwardly around his shoulders. Marcus did not resist at all. He simply let his arms fall limp as another agent secured the cold steel cuffs around his own wrists, locking him into his new reality. The sheer public humiliation of the moment was absolute and inescapable. He was being treated like a common street criminal in front of thousands of wealthy tourists, terminal employees, and his entire stunned family. Lily was standing just a few feet away, still holding her smartphone perfectly steady. The live stream was actively capturing every single second of the federal takedown, broadcasting it in high definition directly to the thousands of church members and community gossips who had tuned in expecting a tropical tour. An agent briefly glanced at the phone, but completely ignored the recording. They did not care about the digital audience. They only cared about executing the federal warrants and securing their targets. As the federal agents began to physically march the two handcuffed men away from the VIP boarding lane, total pandemonium erupted at the gate. Keisha let out a blood-curdling hysterical scream that pierced the terminal. She lunged forward desperately, reaching for Kyle's bound hands, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect vacation makeup. "Kyle," she shrieked, her voice breaking with absolute terror and disbelief. "Tell them it is a mistake. Tell them you did not do anything wrong." An officer quickly stepped into her path, gently but firmly blocking her frantic pursuit. Kyle refused to look at his wife, keeping his eyes glued to the polished marble floor as he was walked toward the terminal exit. Vanessa, witnessing the catastrophic implosion of her luxury providers, immediately shifted into pure self-preservation mode. She instinctively took 3 large steps backward, physically distancing herself from the handcuffed men. She adjusted her wide-brimmed straw hat and tried to look like an innocent bystander who had simply gotten caught in the crossfire. "Officer, I have absolutely nothing to do with their business dealings," Vanessa announced loudly, hoping the crowd would hear her desperate disclaimer. "I am just his ex-wife. I am entirely innocent in whatever financial mess they created." A female FBI agent paused, stepping directly into Vanessa's path. She looked Vanessa up and down, taking in the expensive silk dress and the designer luggage piled nearby. "Vanessa Smith?" the agent asked, holding a separate clipboard with official documents. Vanessa nodded eagerly, assuming she was being cleared to leave the scene. "Yes, that is me. I am just a victim here." The agent offered a tight, humorless smile. "I am formally serving you notice that your primary residence located at the Sovereign in Buckhead, Atlanta, is currently being seized under federal asset forfeiture laws. The property was purchased and maintained using stolen corporate funds. Federal marshals are currently changing the locks on your unit as we speak. You will not be permitted to return to the premises to collect any items." Vanessa's jaw dropped open in sheer horror. The arrogant boss babe facade shattered into a million irreparable pieces right there in the terminal. Her dream home, her luxury lifestyle, her entire fabricated identity had just been seized by the federal government. She let out a guttural sob, collapsing onto her $3,000 stolen luggage, completely devastated. The harsh reality of impending homelessness crashed over her. Lily stood frozen, watching her mother break down, and her father being marched out of the terminal in steel chains. Her hands began to shake violently, unable to process the destruction of her family. The smartphone slipped from her weak grip, plummeting toward the hard marble floor. The device hit the ground with a loud crack, but the screen remained perfectly intact, and the live stream continued broadcasting without interruption. The camera lens faced upward, capturing a dramatic angled view of the high ceiling, the flashing red lights of the security scanners, and the chaotic audio of her family completely falling apart. Thousands of eager viewers sitting in their Atlanta living rooms watched the mighty empire crumble in real time. The chat window exploded with shock as the very same church community that Vanessa had successfully weaponized against me mere hours ago was now bearing witness to her absolute financial and social ruin. The truth was violently dragged into the light, and no amount of fake tears or religious manipulation could ever save them from the brutal consequences of their own boundless greed. The digital fallout was instantaneous and absolutely spectacular to witness. The viral livestream of the federal takedown ripped through Atlanta faster than a raging wildfire. Within a single hour, local news outlets had already picked up the chaotic footage, broadcasting the dramatic arrest of a prominent local logistics manager and a certified public accountant right at the port of Miami. The stark reality of the situation crashed down on the exact same social circles that had eagerly participated in my attempted crucifixion just one day prior. The private Facebook group for the Atlanta megachurch became a frantic, chaotic scramble of hypocritical backtracking. The self-righteous church aunties, the judgmental deacons, and the gossip-hungry community leaders, who had so eagerly condemned me, suddenly realized they had publicly defended a pair of federal criminals. They had weaponized their faith to protect a woman who was actively conspiring to embezzle hundreds of thousands of dollars from a hardworking black female business owner. The sheer embarrassment of their misplaced loyalty sparked a massive digital panic across the congregation. I sat at my executive desk watching the notifications shift from hateful vitriol to desperate groveling. They were rapidly deleting their slanderous posts, frantically attempting to scrub the internet of their toxic comments before my legal team could finalize the defamation lawsuits I had promised. My personal phone began to vibrate violently with a relentless flood of incoming text messages and voicemails. The apologies poured in dripping with fake sincerity and frantic backpedaling. Sister Chloe, we were completely deceived by the enemy, they wrote in long, pathetic paragraphs. We had absolutely no idea they were stealing from your business. Please find it in your heart to forgive our hasty words. People who had called me a bitter, barren stepmother less than 24 hours ago were now begging for my grace and understanding. They wanted immediate absolution. They wanted me to absolve them of their vicious mob mentality so they could sleep peacefully at night without facing any real legal consequences. I did not type a single word in response. I did not offer them an ounce of the grace they had so ruthlessly denied me when I was under attack. Instead, I methodically opened my contact list and began executing a total social purge. I selected the name of every single person who had sent me hate, every community leader who had enabled Vanessa's lies, and every mutual friend who had remained silently complicit. I hit the block button over and over again, completely erasing them from my existence. I permanently severed their access to my life, my energy, and my highly successful future. They had shown me their true colors when they thought I was bleeding, and I was never going to allow them back into my kingdom now that I had emerged completely victorious. The social reversal was total and absolute, leaving Marcus and Vanessa entirely isolated from the community they had tried to manipulate. The social excommunication was only the very first layer of their punishment. The devastating financial ruin that followed was absolute and entirely inescapable. Without the steady illicit pipeline of my stolen corporate funds, Vanessa's fake independent boss mom facade completely evaporated overnight. The federal asset forfeiture was executed with brutal efficiency. Government agents seized the luxury high-rise condominium in Buckhead, freezing all associated bank accounts and confiscating the designer bags, jewelry, and premium vehicles purchased with the embezzled money. Vanessa was formally evicted within 30 days, completely stripped of her glamorous fabricated identity. She was forced to pack whatever meager, legitimate belongings she had left into cheap plastic trash bags and move directly into a rundown motel on the outer industrial edge of the city. There were no more catered brunches, no more crystal champagne flutes, and no more arrogant social media posts boasting about building generational wealth. She was reduced to paying daily motel rates, struggling to afford basic necessities, now that her stolen golden goose was permanently slaughtered by federal authorities. Keisha and Kyle experienced an equally catastrophic collapse. The state accounting board launched an immediate emergency review based on the federal indictment and permanently revoked Kyle's certified public accountant license. His professional career was completely annihilated in the blink of an eye. His prestigious mid-level firm instantly severed all ties, publicly distancing themselves from his massive ethical violations to save their own corporate standing. Without his lucrative salary and buried under an insurmountable mountain of federal legal defense fees, Keisha and Kyle were completely bankrupted. The comfortable suburban lifestyle Keisha had smugly bragged about was foreclosed upon by the bank, forcing them to liquidate everything they owned just to keep Kyle out of a maximum security facility while awaiting trial. The arrogant white savior who thought he could easily outsmart a black female founder had completely destroyed his own life and dragged his wife down into the absolute abyss with him. But the harshest reality was reserved for the two men who had orchestrated the entire despicable scheme from the beginning. Marcus and Kyle were denied bail during their initial arraignment, deemed a significant flight risk given the international nature of the luxury cruise they had attempted to board. They sat in federal holding cells, stripped of their tailored linen shirts and expensive watches, wearing matching standard-issue orange jumpsuits. The 500-page dossier of digital evidence I had meticulously compiled for Special Agent Davis was absolutely airtight. The prosecution possessed the altered audit logs, the fake invoices, the IP addresses, and the undeniable paper trail mapping every single stolen dollar across state lines. Facing an unwinnable trial against the full weight of the federal government, both men were forced to accept harsh plea deals. They were formally charged with wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The federal judge presiding over the case showed absolutely zero leniency for white-collar criminals who exploited familial trust to execute severe corporate theft. Marcus and Kyle were each facing up to 10 years in federal prison. They had foolishly traded their freedom, their marriages, their reputations, and their entire futures just to fund a fleeting illusion of grandeur. They had risked absolutely everything to look like untouchable kings for a few short weeks, and now they would spend the next decade of their lives locked inside a concrete federal penitentiary. With Marcus securely locked away behind federal bars, the divorce proceedings were an absolute breeze. Standard divorces drag on for agonizing months or even years, bogged down by petty mediations, forced compromises, and bitter arguments over split assets. My divorce was finalized with surgical precision in record time. Marcus was entirely powerless, sitting in his concrete cell, stripped of his arrogant bravado, and completely unable to contest a single motion my attorney filed against him. He signed the divorce decree without a single word of protest, trading away whatever meager personal assets he still had left, just to avoid facing any further civil litigation from my legal team. I did not just sever the marital tie between us. I completely obliterated his legal standing in my life forever. He became nothing more than a bad memory permanently erased from my future. Simultaneously, Samantha, my brilliant corporate attorney, executed the asset forfeiture with brutal and swift efficiency. The federal government liquidated Vanessa's luxury condo and aggressively auctioned off every single designer handbag, piece of jewelry, and premium vehicle purchased with my stolen money. The official restitution order forced the total recovery of the embezzled funds, routing every last stolen penny directly back into my corporate accounts with added penalties and interest. I recouped my entire financial loss, leaving them with absolutely nothing to show for their elaborate heist. The most satisfying victory, however, was the completely unexpected impact on my professional empire. When the dust finally settled, the very same smear campaign Vanessa had desperately orchestrated to destroy my business acted as the ultimate marketing catalyst. Elite high-net-worth clients do not care about church gossip or teenage social media drama. They care about strength, security, and unyielding competence. When the wealthy executives and luxury investors in Atlanta realized exactly how ruthlessly efficient I was at tracking stolen funds, laying a flawless federal trap, and fiercely protecting my assets, my business phones began ringing off the hook. They saw a strong woman who could systematically dismantle a coordinated corporate embezzlement ring over a single weekend without ever breaking a sweat. My active client roster doubled within just 3 short months. My firm revenues skyrocketed well beyond my most ambitious financial projections. I did not just survive their malicious attempt to ruin my stellar reputation. I capitalized on it and built a towering fortress of success directly on top of their spectacular failure. The luxury travel industry quickly recognized my firm as a premier bastion of elite financial security. We expanded our services, integrating specialized financial protection protocols for luxury travel and opening a brand new corporate division in my company. I hired dedicated staff, promoted loyal employees like Maria, the lead janitor, giving her a massive bonus for her unwavering dedication, and relocated my headquarters to an even larger, prestigious office building downtown. Every single morning, I walked into my new executive suite and looked out over the Atlanta skyline, knowing I owned my success entirely. No one was leeching off my hard work anymore. The toxic parasite had been surgically removed, and the host was thriving like never before. 6 months after the final gavel fell in the federal courtroom, I finally took the incredible trip that started this entire cascade of revelations. I did not need an anniversary or a partner as an excuse to celebrate my beautiful life. I packed my pristine Louis Vuitton luggage, the exact same bags Marcus had so callously ignored on my bed all those months ago, and ordered a private black car to the international terminal. I bypassed the crowded security lines, walking through the exclusive priority lane with the effortless ease of a woman who carries zero dead weight. Right now, I am sitting in the unmatched luxury of a private first-class suite on an Air France flight heading straight to Paris. The spacious cabin is incredibly quiet, save for the gentle, soothing hum of the massive engines carrying me high across the Atlantic Ocean. A flight attendant, wearing a crisp, elegant uniform, just poured me a tall, crystal glass of perfectly chilled vintage champagne. I lean back against the plush seat, resting my hand on the smooth, polished wood of the tray table, and look out the wide oval window. The sun is just beginning to set, casting a brilliant golden glow over the endless sea of soft white clouds far below. It is a truly breathtaking view of absolute serenity and boundless freedom. I take a slow, deliberate sip of the expensive champagne, letting the crisp, bright bubbles dance on my tongue. I think about the foolish man sitting in a stark gray cell eating scheduled cafeteria meals, and the arrogant woman living in a cheap roadside motel, wondering how her fake kingdom crumbled so incredibly fast. I think about the sheer audacity they possess to honestly believe they could exploit my ambition and weaponize my own success against me. They thought my quiet grace was a weakness. They foolishly mistook my professional silence for submission. Instead, I used their own massive ego as the shovel to dig their graves, and I gladly provided the dirt to fill them in. The unparalleled peace I feel right now, soaring thousands of feet above the ocean, is worth every single tear I refuse to cry. I look at my reflection in the dark glass of the airplane window, and I see a woman who survived the absolute worst betrayal imaginable and emerged entirely victorious. I see a visionary founder, a relentless fighter, and a resilient queen who firmly refused to let thieves steal her crown. Never shrink your kingdom to accommodate the ego of a man who builds his castles with your bricks. When they try to bury you, remind them you own the dirt. If you found strength in this journey, hit the like button and subscribe for more empowering content. Have you ever had to legally destroy someone who tried to ruin your reputation? Share your story below. Chiara.